All right, folks, we are live here on the Yishai Fleischer Show, broadcasting live from the land of Israel, from Judea, and I am joined by Rav Mike Feuer. Rav Mike, shalom and welcome.
Shalom, Yishai. It's good to see you.
Yeah, and it's fun. Usually I am in my home studios. Today I'm in my offices here in Hebron, right across. I have a window right here, and that's the window onto the Avram Avinu Synagogue, built in 1540, and it's just really fun, and I've set it up. I have also a microphone here, but it's not working for some reason, so we're doing our best with the technology that we have. It's great to be live with you. I just felt that there's no way to do this Torah portion without you. We just had to talk about it. And this is really part of the cliche. It's really one of my favorites, but it's also one of everybody's favorites. You know, it's such an important Torah portion, and it's a Torah portion of Balak. And really, I really give a lot of credit to God if this little tiny a slug of a person could say such a thing. But like the Torah flips the camera and takes it to a different place. And really, this is like the first Torah portion where you're not seeing it. First Torah portion since Noach that you're not seeing the story from the Jewish angle. You're seeing it from some other angle, and it's like from the outside looking in. And here comes this wizard / great prophet, and he's out there he's a prophet for hire, and he's out there to curse the Jewish people. God is going to stop him. So the reason I'm giving credit to God here is because like it's a director's cut. It's like, wow, like a different like a different angle on the story of Israel, seen from somebody who we've also, by the way, found historical proof for in the famous Deir el Allah dig that uncovered really the scroll of Bilam, and he was a real personality. And kind of a famous sorcerer, wizard, prophet person. And he's out there to curse the Jews. And this is seen in the Torah as really like the opposite number to Abraham. Like he wakes up in the morning to saddle his donkey. He wakes up in the morning to saddle his she donkey. And this, one is here to give a blessing to this world. One is to go against God's will and curse his people. And so you have an incredible drama set up in our household. It's like a movie. It's like this is the big one. I try to make it into a show in the house. So really, let's start out with general thoughts about the Torah portion of Balak and the story of Bilam, the evil king, the evil prophet who comes against Israel. What do you got to say?
Well, it's quite an introduction. The fact that Bilam represents an inversion of so many things. I mean, like you said, this Torah begins with the inversion of perspective. We've been following the story of Am Yisrael basically since the patriarchs and the matriarchs. Certainly since the Exodus, the camera has been squarely on the camp, so to speak. And then suddenly, really without warning, we get this inversion because Am Yisrael has begun the conquest. The conquest began last week, the conquest of the land of Israel. And so you might think, in a normal people's story, once you begin the conquest is when you double down on your own perspective. It's not when you switch the camera and start. I mean, the parsha opens with the sense that like they were worried. Of course they were worried. Am Yisrael's coming. We're coming. We just ate Sichon and Og, these two powerful kings that were meant to block the way into the land. And like I said, you would think that this would be a time in which the Israelite perspective would be enhanced, but it's not. And I think that that's an important piece for understanding what comes, because then we get a next inversion, which is that, as you said, Bilam is often seen as a reversal of Abraham. There are certain actions in the early story that parallel Abraham, especially at the binding of Isaac, you said, waking up early in the morning, saddling his own donkey, etc. But on a deeper level, he's the inversion of Moshe, right? Because Moshe brings the law down to Israel and prays to God that God should only really rest the divine presence on Israel. And here we have God speaking to Bilam, right? And it's such a surprise that the sages have to engage it by saying, "Listen, Bilam was necessary because we don't want the nations to be able to say if you had sent us a Moshe, we would have done right too. Like there's nothing special about the Jews. You gave them everything, God. You gave them the Torah. You gave them Moshe. And of course they did what you wanted them to do. So God said, okay, so I'll give you Bilam. Again, he's another inversion. And last but certainly not least, in fact, most fundamentally, Bilam is brought into curse and he ends up blessing. right? That the perspective which he brings, even though it comes from outside, even though it has been paid, well paid apparently, to curse, ends up seeing that which is right and true within Am Yisrael in a way which, excuse me, in a way in which is so powerful that his characterizations of the Jewish people, as we'll get to, follow us down through the ages. And so then to go back to my original contention, I think that's why the Torah changes the perspective, because it wants to tell us is that there's a fundamental problem with Revelation, which is that on one hand, it's ultimately parochial, right? It's local. These people at that time with that culture had this for breakfast and then God talked. On the other hand, it's meant to be universal. The Torah is for all people at all times in all places. How does that happen? Well, one of the ways in which it happens is that those who come from outside are able to see its truth as well, and not just those immersed in its internal narrative, as we say today. You hear that? And that's why the story of Bilam is this constant inversion that ends with these great blessings. So that's my first general frame for you. I'll give.
So you have this like contra. As you're saying, an inversion. He's an inversion to Abraham. He's also obviously an inversion to Moses. And the sages say like this guy had prophetic power, maybe even greater than Moses. There's something about this guy, and you know when you have a bad guy, you know he better be just as strong as the good guy, or else it's an unfair game. Like there's something
certainly not a very good story,
right? But what's funny is that while he's a good prophet, he's a great powerful prophet. God makes fun of him throughout this story, especially with the famous image of the talking donkey. The talking donkey represents Bilam's inability to see the angel that is blocking the donkey's way, and he can't read the donkey's he can't see what the donkey sees. And you can just imagine that the folks that are with him just see him hitting this donkey. The donkey's not doing what he's demanding of it, and so he can't control his donkey. He can't understand his donkey. And the donkey, I was thinking to myself, its first thing to do is to walk the wrong way. And that reminds us of the first temple of the Jewish people, which is that they were going after avodah zarah, after idolatry. We're going the wrong way.
Straying.
The second one,
straying from the path.
Right.
Literally.
And the second one was the crushing of the leg. He went against the wall. And that reminds us of the second Beit HaMikdash, in which the Jewish people did not have love for one another. They were crushing each other. They were hurting one another. They had not enough respect for one another, not enough love. And that was the great sin of the second temple. And there was too much factionalism, too much Jewish infighting. And then the third one is that the animals crouching down. And that represents the third effort to come to the land of Israel and to settle it and to stop there and to land there and to crouch down on it. And all these and the hardship of that and the disagreement is, should we crouch down now? Should we anchor ourselves? Are we there yet? Is this the time? And the reason I get this idea is because these three successive failures are clearly spelled out in the Torah as being regalim, as being
pilgrimage times.
Pilgrimage. But I was thinking like a greater pilgrimage, like the pilgrimage to the land of Israel, the representation of that challenge. In any case, Bilam does not see why the donkey is straying from the path or crushing his leg or stopping. He doesn't see that the angel of God has come up against him. And so the Torah, in a sense, is a little bit making fun of a guy who's very proud of himself and very proud of his own strength. And he thinks that he can do the classic pagan idea of I will control God's mood. I will get him right at the right moment to do what I want him to do, as opposed to listening to God's will. And that's really the difference. Bilam is an opportunist trying to force God to get him to get God in, to get him on the good side or the bad side, or to get him to cajole him and so that God will do your will, as opposed to Moses' idea, which is, hey, people, let's do God's will. That reminds me of a little Yishai phrase. Okay, people say from your mouth to God's ears, and I always say, how about from God's mouth to our ears? That will work things out much better, right? There's some differences between Bilam and Moshe.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I mean, part of what came up for me while you were describing it, and Bilam's journey from the moment that he gets contracted, so to speak, and like you pointed out, there's historical evidence that indeed, Bilam was the cursor, not like the thing on your screen, but the guy who curses, who stood on the watchtower of the settled land against tribes coming from the wilderness, just like Sichon and Og had been the kings who were the military front that held off throughout history. Tribes have come into the land, taken various routes to get here, etc. But he was the last defense. Right? He was the last defense meant to hold back, the unsettled from the settled. Right. But so his whole journey represents in many ways a real face of human experience. So I want to go a little deeper with what you're saying, is that in this simple text, it's very confusing. Does God want Bilam to go? Does God not want Bilam to go? Like, God tells him, don't go, don't go, don't go. And then he's like, fine, you really want to go, go, but you only do what I say. And then God sends the angel to stop him. And it takes 3 times, like you said, and a talking donkey until Bilam gets the message. And still the angel says, but nah, you're already halfway there, but you're only going to do what I tell you, right? There's a tension, I think, that, and to me, it bespeaks this tension in the relationship to God, which I would love to say only belongs to idolaters, but really is part of the problem of a religious personality. On one pole, you've got theurgy, like what you're saying, the sense that I can make God do what I want. And we all indulge in this when we pray, right? God, make me rich. God, heal my friends. God, protect my children, etc., etc. It's a part of prayer. On the other hand, there's another pole, which is fatalism, which is, you know what? Your will be done. I need to learn to accept, like you said, from God's mouth to my ears. In between them is a very powerful stance, which is what Bilam doesn't really understand, which is thy will be done through me. Bilam senses his power. He understands that it's significant to be a human being at all, much less a prophet. What he doesn't understand is that doesn't make him significant, except insofar as he is able to be a specific expression of the divine will. He thinks he's right. And that's why in the end, God's will is done through him, although not by his free will. He's forced. He goes out, he opens his mouth to curse, and a blessing comes out. But it's a lesson to us all. We're never going to force God's hand. On the other hand, we're called to do more than simply accept what God wants. We're meant to have an active stance in the world. Thy will be done through me. My particular experience is an important vessel for God's will to manifest in the world.
So you have this Bilam that but what's his will? Is his will? He knows that this is a blessed people. He knows
what's Bilam's will. Yeah,
he knows that, but he's coming to curse the people. So he's not really interested. He's not asking, "Oh God, what do you want me to do today?"
No, exactly. No, that's what I said. He's on the end of the spectrum of my will. He's saying I can pull one over on God. I know when God gets angry. He's convinced that he knows better. That's the theurgic side, right?
Right.
But the point is God doesn't just stop him. God doesn't just say, listen, full stop. God keeps throwing barriers in his way, but lets him go. That's why Rashi quotes the stages. Right? A person gets drawn in the way in which they want to go because your particular existence matters. Your experience of your own will matters. The goal is to figure out how your deepest will is an expression of the divine will, not to set the two against each other and not to erase your own.
Right. And our sages say, make his will your will, so that he will make your will his will. The first stop there is to make his will your will. But then what happens is that in time, his will is your will.
And yet you're not.
There's a bridging
God.
of wills.
But yet you're not God. So your specific desires always need to be sifted.
Right.
But this is one of the, by the way, I hate to go too far with this, but this is one of the great challenges of our current society, is that people have chosen to identify their deepest desires sometimes with their sexual identity, sometimes with their I don't know, their economic status, sometimes whatever it is, and they say, well, this is who I am, which I'm not going to argue with. I can't tell you who you are. But it's not so simple to say that therefore this is what God wants.
Right.
You know, I wish that were true. I really do. And somewhere in my heart,
why would you wish that would be true? That's the heart of idolatry.
No, because I think that a lot of people would be healthier and happier if they were able to touch that place within themselves, which is genuinely them, and didn't have to come into conflict. Right?
Yes, but then you are really serving yourself or serving that thing. Okay, what is it? Well, what does genuinely that even mean? What are we even genuinely? It's hard to know.
I understand.
It's hard to know. It's hard to know. And so there's a voice inside which is the desire, and you're like, I am genuinely hungry, and therefore I'm genuinely, that's what I am. I'm hungry, and I define myself as the hungry flag. I'm, you know,
which to some degree you are. And by the way, it's not so simple to know what God wants for you either.
That's for sure.
Even someone who like myself, who professes allegiance to the Torah and to the oral law that was given with it, you know, knows that what God actually wants for me in any given moment, or for my life in general, is not so easy to prescribe.
It's not. It really isn't. And I want to bless everybody with a sense of having as much clarity as possible in this world. Part of the game is not having clarity and trying to understand as best as you can what God wants from you. That's part of the game. I want to really, bless everybody to do that. I want to just give a few examples. Right now, we're doing this session live on social media. So there's a guy named Sammy Alam who's writing "Free Palestine" on my comments. So first thing is, thank you for offering it for free. But I want to say to you that most people are charging top dollar for it. So far, I've not seen that Palestine is free at all. Here in my work in Hebron, we're really doing our best to purchase a lot of property, and it's quite expensive. But in any case, Sammy Alam is using my platform, which is a pro-Israel platform, and he's coming onto my platform and trying to shtup in, his message, which is clearly anti-Israel, which is a type of warfare. Really. It's a type of bullying. It's a type of photo bombing somebody else's nation and life. But okay, you know what I mean. But that's fine. And to me, I'm not going to be bullied by that, and I'm going to see it through humor. And I see here that my good friend and producer when we're live, Lou Weiss, is here, and he writes, "Sammy Alam, you're correct. Free Palestine of its corrupt and terrorist leaders." All right. So thank you very much, Lou, for joining us. And we have Penny. Says Boker Tov from New York. Nice to see you both on here again. And there's other folks that are coming from all over the world. So thank you very much. It's great to be with you. Lou says that my audio is not ideal, and that's because this microphone is not being picked up by the computer. And I'm sorry about that, Lou. We're doing our best out here. I do want to tell you, Rav Mike, that we have a new sponsor for the show.
Great.
And yes, so we of course have prohibitionpickle.co.il, which is just you are not only a promoter, but you're also a user of the products. Am I right here?
Oh, careful. I prefer the word consumer. Thank you very much.
Consumer.
Although the hearing is somewhat addictive. And anybody who wants to sponsor Kiddush, more than happy to receive your largesse while you support a wonderful small business in the land of Israel and my Shabbos enjoyment.
That's right. So I want you to. So that's like very Israel and very Shabbos.
You know the whole buy me a cup of coffee funding platform.
Yes.
This is buy me some herring.
That's right. I'm actually on that platform. It's called Buy Me a Coffee /Yishai. That's fun. But I have also a new show sponsor. Very happy about this. Very excited about it. Do you see these cool watches? This is called Retro Watch Guy, and these are awesome watches from the 60s, 70s, and 80s. Beautifully refurbished, or maybe they even are not refurbished. They were just perfect the way they were, and he collects them and sells them. And this is part of, and you got a great, unbelievable Instagram page, followed by almost 30,000 people, retro watch guy. And
Fantastic.
and here's the way we're going to make this, how we're going to make this Jewish, is that first thing is you can have.
We're gonna set yours back, or actually forward by 15 minutes.
Well, that's a great idea. No, you can actually have it. I was thinking that you were going to say to have it on Israel time, so that you could always have, one of these watches with 2 clocks. You can always have Israel time in your life, or you can have a watch in your drawer with like Jerusalem time, or you can have a Shabbat watch. A Shabbat watch. Shabbat watch.
Which when you look at it, it just says, "Shh, don't worry about it."
No, you just take off your weekday watch, put it in the drawer, and take out your special Shabbat watch, put it on, and that's really fun. I'm so
compulsive about time that I don't wear a watch, actually.
Well, then don't mention that again, okay? So Retro Watch Guy will do that for you. But also Retro Watch Guy is actually an amazing Jew named Jordan and an awesome family. And basically they met me here in Israel, in Hebron, in February 2020 as part of the Aish Destiny Women's Trip. And they changed their whole life, partially even through listening to this show. And they were on the way of Torah observance for a long time. Now they moved to a place in Denver with an Eruv, and they've come closer to God, and are really already planning to make Aliyah, and this is part of their Eretz Yisrael, and so this is part of their move towards that. So it's a special time, and they keep special time through Retro Watch Guy, and I'm very, very proud that they're a part of the show, and I want to wish them a lot of success and bracha to continue to be on their journey towards closeness with God, closeness with Torah, and closeness with the land of Israel. And so if you check out Retro Watch Guy on Instagram or go to their website, which is retrowatchguy.com, and buy an awesome watch, you're really on the road. And, of course, there is a coupon code Yishai, and you get 10% off. And some of these watches are like $500. Some of them are like $2,500. It's like nice, cool watches.
It's
like a whole.
It's a thing.
It's a thing. It's exactly a thing. So check it out. It's also a guy's thing. Check it out. Okay, so that's awesome.
I'll walk for it.
That's right, Nick. Now, another thing that I want to talk with you about is you're hitting this donkey, right? You're Bilam. You're hitting the donkey. Finally, God reveals to you the fact that there's an angel of God with a sword drawn right before you.
Yeah.
First thing, this angel of God with a sword drawn. It appears in the Seder night. It appears to Joshua when he's entering the land of Israel. What is this deal about
Perhaps
the angel with the sword drawn?
With the hand stretched over Jerusalem.
Right, with David.
Depending on which midrash you look at, what that actually looked like, but yeah.
Right. So who is this like Sar Tzava, this minister of war of gods? Who is he that he with his sword drawn? That he is this powerful and scary angel of which animals cower from. Joshua's like, "Are you with me or against me?" King David sees him as kind of stopping the plague or actually being the plague and showing the place. Look, what is this angel of God with a sword drawn? Is this something we should have in our lives? Should we meditate on this angel of God with the sword drawn?
Every morning as part of the structure of the Kriyat Shema, of the acceptance of the yoke of heaven and the recognition of God's unity, we say 2 blessings beforehand. One of them contains the phrase Ba'al Milchamot. Right? It's a name for God, the master of war, which always makes me think of that Bob Dylan song. It was a very, very powerful song, good Jew that he was. But I think this bespeaks a very challenging part of the way in which we as Jews embrace the world, which is that everything comes from God. We often forget that the idolaters really, in certain ways, had it easier. So anything you don't like about the world, you can just blame on the God that you don't belong to, right? It's like, oh yeah, evil, oh war, no, that's bad. And Mars, he's an awful, but my deity would never do such a thing, right? Because by adhering to the awful and awesome truth that there is only one source for everything, we present ourselves in the world with the problem that means that everything we perceive as evil, and which indeed might be evil, without getting into that philosophical argument, also comes from God, right? Including war. Now, I'm not here to romanticize war, but I think there's also an important recognition that sometimes structures in life are so broken that they can't be fixed. They have to be destroyed. And in history, it's war that has done that. Which is not justification. Please don't misunderstand me. I'm not advocating, right? But certainly in the time of Bilam, right, when it was taken for granted. You know, we often we speak about this idea that might makes right. You're familiar with the phrase, right? In today's postmodern discourse, that's seen as a cynical sort of like, oh, it's all about power and Foucault, if you're familiar. But the reality is, the simple meaning is that in a world without morality, without a clear divine revealed guidance, so victory is the only standard by which you can understand what was meant to be in the world. Ipso facto, as we say, right? You win, you must. That's why up until the Middle Ages, they were still doing trial by ordeal, right? In Christian Europe, it's like, I'll get my knight, you get your knight, let them joust, and whoever gets knocked off the horse clearly was wrong. You know, it sounds silly to us, but it bespeaks something very deep, I think, in what you're saying, is that there is a power. And what's a malach? A malach is a messenger, right? Malach meaning angel. It's a messenger of God. Messenger of God that our sages teach us had no will, unlike Bilam. And that's one of the reasons I think that he's contrasted here with Bilam. Unlike Bilam and like Joshua, right? Or David in those cases, right? Who have will and are therefore, on one hand, more powerful than the angels because we're like God in that respect. On the other hand, much more troubled because just because you have will doesn't mean you know what to do. On the contrary, right? And so therefore, they're confronted with this reality, which is that sword comes from God as well.
My take on that is that you could say that Bilam was going to bless or curse, and you could be like, it's just words. It's not a big deal. And God's like, he's showing you visually, like, you came for war, and I met you head on for war.
Rashi brings that. You familiar, yeah?
What's the Rashi there?
Rashi points out that when Jacob and Esav were blessed by Yitzchak, right? We say Hakol kol Yaakov, v'yedayim yedei Esav, right? And from that moment, the voice was the voice of Jacob, and the hands were the hands of Esav, and Esav was blessed that he should right? He's going to live by the sword, right? And so Rashi points out that historically, the mouth, prayer, study, media has been the power of Am Yisrael.
Right.
That's the way we roll, so to speak. And the nations have ruled by the sword. Here's Bilam coming with the power of the mouth.
Right.
He's taking the tools of Israel. So God says, okay, you can play at this game. I'll just send war against you.
Right.
That's what Rashi brings this
inversion. Okay, so that's similar to what I'm saying, but a little bit different, because what I'm saying is this is to identify that you should know that what he came to do was to make war against Israel. Yes. And the reason I say this is because as part of the fight against narrative war, you have to identify it as war. You have to identify it as war. Like BDS, it's a type of narrative war.
Further, an economic war. It's even more visceral.
No, see, the economic aspect of BDS is minor, and you could therefore say, well, no. They're trying to besmirch the name of Israel, trying to scare people from being part of it. And so therefore, it's much more a form of a narrative war than an economic war. That's much more important to them. But in any case, my point to you is that God was like, you're here for war, and I'm here. And if you want, I know how to meet you for war. And we should say that also. Yeah, it's on. It's on. The other thing I wanted to ask you about with regarding to Bilam is that our sages tell us a very deep secret about his abilities. And they say that his abilities was that he was able to know and to concentrate on God's angry moment against the Jews once a day. Yeah. There's like this moment. It's a blip. It's a second. You could only like right. It's like this tiny little like moment. And I mean, thank God just that it's only just that tiny moment, right? But he knew how to fixate on that moment. And it's not that he's fixated on God's big will. It's almost like he's identified a weakness. It's almost like he's exploiting a moment in God. And the way that the Torah actually describes that, I found, is through an amazing little thing that it tells you. When he's smashing his donkeys, hitting his donkeys, he's beating it with a stick. When the donkey opens its mouth, its own miracle, the donkey is like, am I not the donkey that has carried you all these years since you were a child? Am I not that? And have I not always followed your will and been there for you? What's the donkey really saying? Like, the donkey should have said, ow, quit it. Why are you hitting me? But the donkey's like, is that really, it makes an argument. It's like, is it really fair for you to believe that I'm just a bad donkey, that you should kill me now, as opposed to seeing the broader thing? What's the donkey saying? Don't you see me in context? Don't you see me in context? And it's a way of God saying to Bilam, like, don't you see my will in context? And sometimes I say to, like, here's this guy right now, Sami Alam. He's writing more. He says, free Palestine from the illegal occupying entity, the Zionist regime, funded by the terrorist organization USA. It's only a matter of time. Allah Akbar. He writes on our live feed right now. And I'm like, don't you see God's will in the longer lens? Don't you have context? Don't you see that we've beaten you in all these wars because Allah is with us? Don't you see that we've survived throughout all this time and we're back in our land because Allah is with us? Don't you see the big picture? Are you really so locked in to this tiny little narrative that we took somebody else's land and all that kind of stuff? Like all these created, narratives of don't you see Allah's larger will? And that's what I think is almost like actually God telling the nations, like, don't you see that I want Israel back? Don't you want to bless Israel? Because that's a real good way to go, because that's actually my will.
In many ways, it's the essential difference between a blessing and a curse. I mean, if you think about it, you can bless almost anyone. That's what Rabbi Nachman says, right? The listakel. You always want to look for the nekuda tova, right? You look for that little point. That little point. I just want to bless you, I want to bless you that. Like, even if it's this ever small thing, because I'm only doing good there, I'm gonna lift up even in someone who I oppose. Like, I bless this person; he should be healthy and well, and see a little light in the world, right? A curse, though, you don't bring down curses on someone who you otherwise love. You understand? You might bless someone who you otherwise oppose, because there's something good there, and elevating it is only bringing more good into the world. But a curse, you don't curse it. It's like God forbid your children. Like we don't see that bad things in our children. Come on. I mean, I strive not to, right? But we're human. But would you ever curse them for that? Because no, like you're saying, it's overall, yes, I love you. You're my child. You're my friends. You're my people. Whatever it is. Yeah, I see this. You understand the difference is that in order to curse on some level, you have to let yourself go all the way into the negative perspective. But to bless, all you need to do is be willing to look for the good. So I hear that.
Okay, so that really brings me towards the final point that I wanted to ask you, which is like this. When Bilam and Balak finally meet, so Balak is the contractor, right? He's a king, and he's looking to contract a great wizard. Give him respect. The Torah clearly gives him respect by naming the Torah portion after him. Give him respect that he's not like, okay, let's go out with our chariots and kill the Jews. He's like, this is a sophisticated enemy. I need to have a sophisticated strategy against the enemy. Like, give him the respect that he deserves for that. And there's even more respect. He says to Bilam, the wizard, he says to him, the king says to the wizard, he says to him, let me take you to a place where you'll only see just the edge of the Jewish people, and you'll be able to curse them. And he does this 2 times, actually, and it's very clear that there's a very thought-out idea here. If I could take you to show them just the edge, you'll be able to curse them. I have come to believe and understand that there was a great strategy there, which is let's just look for the bad nekuda, the bad point in the Jews, and blow that up, and then you'll be able to curse the Jews. And if you think about it, the media does that as well, and you see it all the time on the pro-Palestinian side. They'll take an event where a soldier is hurting an Arab or something like that. They'll catch it on video. They'll say, "This is Israel. You take that moment. You don't see it in context. Again, the context. I believe that this whole Torah portion is about context. He's like, you don't see it in context. So the king, the evil king, Balak is like, I'll help you curse them by just seeing the edge. And the contra to that is that he's shown constantly the breadth and width of Israel, the tents. How goodly are your tents, O Jacob? I see the whole thing. I see your purpose. I see where you come from. I see where you're going. I see
numbers
the whole
without count. Yes, yeah,
right.
It's big. It's very big. The vision he gets.
That goes back to what you were saying about like I could bless, how did you say it? That I could, somebody that I hate, I want to curse. I'll find a way to do it. But we look for the goodness in a person, and our rabbis tell us, "Have mekabel et kol adam b'sever panim yafot." Right, like receive when you see the whole person, when you don't just judge them on that moment where they ticked you off. When you're like, look, he's a father, she's a mom, and they're doing all this good other stuff. Okay, we had a thing, but I see the totality. I'll bless them instead of cursing them.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. This parsha is about inversion and the difference between the piece and the whole. In that sense, it's a fascinating component of the conquest, because the reality is that it's here. Like we're seeing the other side of the lens, the victim of our victory, so to speak, right? Because we're gonna go to war and we're gonna wipe out, some of Moab. Right, and the women of Midian and everything that's coming at the end here, right? And in that sense, it's very interesting because remember, if the Torah, which of course is the story of how out of Egypt, gave us the Torah and brought us into the land to fulfill a divine mission, if the Torah hadn't preserved this perspective, no one would ever know this story. Right? It makes you wonder, like, then why? Why do we need to know this story? There are many reasons, but I think for us, it's also in order to give us courage, because the reality is that the Jews suffer most from that narrow perspective you're speaking about, right? The American Jews who aren't immersed in daily life here, or even Israeli Jews who are immersed in daily life here, but feel the struggle and the moral complexity of what it is to rebuild ourselves as a people in our land. They get sucked into that narrowness of vision. What's the Torah saying? Don't be afraid of it. You don't have to say it's not true, although you want things to be true if you're going to believe them, right? That doesn't mean you have to swallow everything that you're fed by the media, but you don't have to say that it's not true. On the contrary, if someone is cursing you and saying that thing is bad, so you can fix it, but not in the context of, we're awful, evil, we're not. No, in the context of saying, oh yeah, you know what? He's right. That's not good. We can fix that. And the fact of the matter is, I can tell you this in my counseling, people who feel generally good about themselves are far better equipped to fix that which is bad within them. It's the people who give into a story that their badness defines them, who become completely disempowered. And not only that, but you will usually double down on their negativity in an attempt to defend some sense of their humanity. And so it's a mistake, by the way, speaking to our Jewish brothers and sisters, it's a mistake to double down and to say, yeah, see, this evil defines us. It's also a mistake also to pretend that we don't make mistakes, that we're human, Jews just like everybody else, only more so. The thing to remember, and I think this is why the Torah preserves this, remember, I'll say it again, if the Torah hadn't preserved this story, no one would ever know it. It would be a smooth narrative. Out from Egypt, God gave us the Torah, told us to go to the land, we defeated our enemies. Oh, you think the quotes from Bilam are important? God could have said them to Moshe. It could have said them to anyone, right? It preserves it in order to teach us is many things, not the least of which is don't be afraid of the things which the people will curse you for. Because why? Because their ability to curse is because what you're pointing out, which is that the hatred and the narrowness that allows them to only focus on that. Our ability to derive blessing from this is two things: to hold the wholeness of our mission, and when necessary to say, you know what? Truth is, he's right. That's an ugly piece. We'll fix that. Well, we're gonna move forward.
I want to speak for a second to the folks that I call the international Torah community out there around the world. Yeah, it's a term I've come up with that people really like, which is the Gentiles of the world and Jews who are outside of the land, but Gentiles around the world especially, who want to be connected to the international Torah community. And I've gotten a lot of people, Rav Mike, who write to me and they say, I'm part of the international Torah community. People write that to me all the time. And I've been wanting, sometimes you give people a definition. They're like, yes, that is what I am. I'm part of the international Torah community. I want to hear the Torah from Zion. And I think that's what we're trying to do through our various broadcasts, including your show, The Jewish Story, jewishstory.co, and ravmike.com is ways people can reach you to hear your other podcasts and also to join in your some of your live content and also your spiritual counseling. But I do want to say about Parshat Balak, the Torah portion of Balak, is I think that this is the Shabbat. I like to give a directive, a message, a
broadcasting to the community.
Right, and I want to say this is your Shabbat, Gentiles of the world, to bless Israel. This is your Shabbat to be like, I bless Israel. I raise up my glass. And I say, I bless you, Israel, this Shabbat. I send you my blessings. If I can have if I have any power to be a blesser or a curser, and the Torah clearly tells us that the Gentiles have a power to be blessers or cursers. Okay. Yes, the Torah says. The Torah says you Gentiles have a power to bless Israel or curse Israel.
I mean, this is a key part of the relationship between the patriarchs and matriarchs and the nations of the world.
Right. And so like in a way the Torah is telling you can curse Israel. Oh yeah. Or you could be amongst those that bless Israel. And if you're listening to this show and you're part of the International Torah Congregation, I was also thinking the International Israel Torah Congregation community, then my urge for you this Shabbat is to really do like as we would say in Yiddish, a gazunta, a strong blessing for the Jewish people this Shabbat. And I know you feel it, but I want you to do it with your mouth. Open your mouth. Show your kids, say, this Shabbat, we are blessing Israel. We're sending that blessing to Israel from here, and it's going to boomerang right back to you. That's for sure. That's a promise from God. Rav Mike Feuer, I want to thank you so much for joining me for Parshat Balak. I want to bless you for continued health, success, and continued great broadcasting to the world.
Amen.
That's right. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. That's right. Kol ha-mevarech mitbarech. Those who bless are blessed. And that's
Lamar.
That's right. V'chen Lamar. We just say that. We say, and to you, sir, as well.
I got you.
That's what it is. I want to thank the Jewish community of Hebron, which I work for, and the Hebron Fund, which is our funding arm, for being there for us right now. I am in my offices looking at the Avram Avinu Synagogue here in Hebron. So check out hebronfund.org for support of the Jewish community of Hebron. And I also want to thank Israel 365 and Israel365.com, really sharing Torah with the international Torah community every single day, including the Israel Bible found at theisraelbible.com. Beautiful translation, beautiful transliteration, beautiful exegesis explanations about especially the issue of the land of Israel. Beautiful cover. It's a gift for your home. Theisraelbible.com. Coupon code Yishai. Bang. 10% of God's holy word from the land of Israel. That's pretty good. Okay? So our friends really make a tremendous difference to us. Rav Mike, you make a tremendous difference to all of us. I want to really thank you for being with me on the show today.
It was absolutely a pleasure. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom to you, sir. Thank you so much. And more great stuff to you folks coming your way. Thank you very much to Lou, who joined us today. Thanks to Bookmouse, who writes, God bless you both rabbis and Eretz Yisrael and Am Yisrael. Thank you to my good friend Yitzi, who's also a sponsor of the show through making great Lego, Jewish biblical Lego. Biblical Lego, that's right. And that's found at jbrick.com. And I'm very proud to have him as a sponsor. And he's making, right now, a model of the Tomb of the Patriarchs, the Matriarchs. In fact, I owe him some pictures. I'm going to try to do that towards Mincha time. I'm going to go towards the afternoon prayer to the Tomb of the Patriarchs, the Matriarchs, take some pictures for you. I got to remember that. Please, you know what? Please, Yitzi from jbrick.com, please write me a WhatsApp in about 1 hour and be like, don't forget to take those pictures. Thank you, Tammy, for saying great show. 3 exclamation points. Thank you very much. Thank you to our good friends at prohibitionpickle.co.il making delicious yum-yums for the world and sending packages and making Shabbat packages. You can sponsor a package. Just go to prohibitionpickle.co.il. Awesome. You're gonna be wherever you are. You're gonna be sending satiation and delightful Shabbos gifts through that. And check out our new sponsor, which is RetroWatchGuy.com or Retro Watch Guy at Instagram. Great watches. You'll keep the time and maybe get that Shabbat watch that you need, that other watch. It's a great Instagram account with really cool and neat stuff. If you like that stuff, it's a delight. And I want to thank also folks that donate for the show through buymeacoffee.com/Yishai. It's easy. It's fun. I really appreciate it. And folks do that all the time. And I really am very thankful to people who enjoy the show and donate. And there's many more people that I can thank. I want to thank Ben Bresky, Yocheved, Moshe Herman, did I say Ben Bresky? Ben Bresky, Tabitha, Yocheved, Moshe Herman, and Lou for producing when we're live. And I want to bless you guys. Bless you with the power to bless. I want to bless you with the power to bless. I want you to be blessed by blessing others. Just think a good thought about a friend, a loved one, and even someone that you don't like so much. Just send them a blessing. God, he should be well. His family should be well. She should be well. And when you see somebody who's really wealthy, be like, they should continue to be blessed. And see your rabbi say he should have peace and have great Torah illuminations. And when you see, your Israeli friend and he's living outside the land of Israel, just say, God bless him and continued connection to the land of Israel. Just think good thoughts about people. Think good thoughts. And especially, we want your blessings. And I'm telling you, people around the world, you have the power to bless Israel. You also have the power to curse. Choose blessings and you shall be blessed. So God bless you folks here from the land of Israel, from Hebron. Lots of blessings from the land of blessings. Only good things, only good tidings. May your connection to God be strong, and may me and you continue to be connected. Lots of love, lots of good things from the land of Israel, and shalom.